The Tennessee football staff got better this offseason, and that's no slight to Jerry Mack or Brian Jean-Marie, because I thought both of those guys were good. Introductory press conferences for Dylan Sampson and William Inge, and why I think that you guys are going to love these two new coaches. That and more. It's your Tuesday Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It's a good Tuesday morning, everybody. Appreciate you guys for checking us out here on Locked On Vols and being with me here today. I'm Arion Carter, as we got a lot to discuss here today. It's going to be a fun show. New assistant press conferences yesterday for Tennessee football. We got to hear for the very first time William Inge, the new linebackers coach, and Dylan Sampson, the new running backs coach, and there's a whole lot of great things that they brought to the table. We're going to hear from those guys. We're going to discuss what they said, all that and more, plus some really good mailbag questions in segment 3. That is the rundown here on today's show. Big shout out to our friends over at Nissan for making this show possible. Take on the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada, and go find your next big adventure. Check them all out today at nissanusa.com. So we have a lot to get into, but I do want to say thank you for joining us and making Locked On Vols your first listen. You can follow as always at _Caner and at Locked On Vols. Watch, listen, subscribe daily for free wherever you listen to your podcast, where you can download us there, and of course subscribing to Locked On Vols on the YouTube channel. Let's start with William Inge, the new linebackers coach for Tennessee. So over this segment next, I'm going to play a clip, and we're going to discuss kind of what these coaches are saying and kind of give my take on it. Ask about his prior relationship to Tim Banks and how really coming to Tennessee all kind of happened spur of the moment in about 48 hours. Here's what Tennessee's new linebackers coach William Inge had to say about coming to Tennessee, why, and of course, his defensive coordinator now, Tim Banks.
Coach Banks and I kind of go back to when he was at Penn State. I was in Indiana. And we have known each other over the years and just kind of have seen each other in passing on the road recruiting. We've also kind of obviously played against each other, but haven't had a chance to be in the same conference. We've never worked together. It's just kind of one of those scenarios where a conversation happened and started, hey, would you be interested? And this is kind of the scenario. And literally, and all this happened in probably 48 hours. It was a 2-day span. Because number one, I know the history and the tradition and the branding that this place has with that Power T and what it all represents, the recruiting that you can be able to do here, but also I'm a fan of Coach Heupel as well, seeing the things that he's done when you look at his background and his record. And then when we got to talking, I think I knew that I could have a big impact here in the group with respect to my position, helping our defensive staff, helping our overall staff, helping our football team. And that was something that was important to me.
William Inge, and that's kind of one of the first things I heard from him. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I've never heard him in front of a microphone. I've never heard him answer questions before. I knew his resume. I studied up on the coach himself, but his energy is something that maybe I wasn't truly expecting. And you never want to judge a book by its cover, but really, really good energy, from the get-go in this introductory press conference Monday afternoon. So I thought that was really, really cool. Talked about his how he kind of got to know Tim Banks and why he wanted to be here at Tennessee. It's one of those proud institutions, not only in the SEC, and he'll speak on that here in a moment, but in college football and that Power T. More on that right here. And he was asked, you work for Kellen DeBoer. You were looking like you were going to go to Alabama. So why and how did you end up here at Tennessee? A good answer here from William Inge.
Yeah, well, as you can assume, it was very tough because you have a very good comfort level with the staff, with people, with how you do things. But then when you have another branded program that's exactly the same, that probably may be just as established as the program that you're dealing with that comes into play, that's something you want to look at and something you want to seek. And having a chance to be able to do something different, be around some of the young men here and help literally get to the hearts and minds of these players and help them compete for an SEC and a national championship, that's something that became very important to me.
So talking about how he came to Tennessee, and that was a difficult decision because he did have a comfort level with working with Kellen DeBoer in Washington. They just, coached together for a national championship, and he's been with him for a little while and having the opportunity to come to the SEC, but not just Alabama, but then getting recruited and trying to, being coveted by Tennessee, which is a very much established brand in college football. And that was appealing to William Inge. A lot of people talk about how it's tough to, myself included, especially early on, how it's tough to want to coach here at Tennessee on defense because the Tennessee offense is so fast that you're always on the field. You're playing so many snaps. And, selfishly from a coach's perspective, the more you're on the field, defensively, the more yards or more points that are be likely to score on you. And you don't want that because it doesn't make you look good. But listen to this answer from William Inge. I think this is really, really good in terms of, how he interpreted coming a part of this coaching staff and how he, looks about playing complementary football, helping the defense, coaching the defense, on the other side from the Josh Heupel offense.
Because I truly believe that in a lot of places it's more a matter of how you see it. Sometimes the time of possession may be a challenge. But if you build your room right, you build your defense structured correctly, that just means more guys get to play. So you have to have more depth in your room, more depth at each individual position, and more people can play. So if we do that, and again, you all know this, on defense, no matter where you are, you have to have the philosophy of you're a fireman coming onto the football field, and there's a 5-alarm blaze. So no matter when you get on the football field or no matter how you get on the football field, it's our responsibility, number one, to be able to put the fire out and get off the field.
We talk about it all the time here on Locked On Vols. Defense is a rotational position more so than anything. Running backs are rotational. At times receivers are. Offensive linemen typically is not. That's why I hated when they did that a little bit last year. And when Pruitt did it when he was here there in that 2020 season, made no sense. But on defense, you're pretty much rotating all over the place. I mean, look at Tennessee's defensive line. Rodney Garner plays 10, 12 guys. And Tennessee's linebackers under Brian John Murray rotated a lot. And so what a recruiting pitch there that he said, it just means we need more players. More players are going to play in the football game. I think that's a really, really good mindset. A couple more here from William Inge on the group that he's inheriting and how, sure, you got Keenan Pili there, but you have a group of young players eager to play and some who have already played and a core group of guys that he's going to be with for a couple of years.
Yeah, yes, it does. But also, no pun intended, that's why we had to work 24/7. Because when you have youth, that's something that you can be able to use to develop, being able to get with them, trying different platforms for learning. Because in the end of the day, it's our responsibility as coaches to make sure that they can be able to go execute. So when you have someone that is what we call green and growing, that means they are young, they're assertive, and they're ready to emerge. Now, we have to be able to do things systematically to be able to allow them to be able to go play and be able to make their plays at the point of attack. And when you have some excitement like that in your room, that's something that really excited me to really want to be here, knowing you just didn't have guys that you're only going to be with, let's say, for 6 months, and then you're kind of starting from scratch. We have a really good room of guys that are really ready to take the next step. And that's something that just excites me as a coach, continuously putting them in scenarios where they can be developed and getting them to be able to do things that they couldn't ordinarily do themselves.
Cracking a little joke there at the beginning. It was a reporter from Go Vols 247 that asked the question, and so he had a little joke there about how, you always got to be coaching 24/7. Again, the energy and the passion, just something that I didn't quite expect coming in from William Inge. But, man, I really, really liked it. Listened to him do that press conference yesterday, and his eagerness and excitement level to work with guys like, Elijah Herring, who will now be a junior, who's not going to be going to the NFL likely after this year. Guys like Arion Carter, Jeremiah Thielander, Edwin Spillman coming in, Jalen Smith, some of these guys that are young, the core group of linebackers. And so I thought that was cool. Last thing here from William Inge, ask about what are you looking for in a linebacker when you are recruiting? And I thought this was funny. He is direct and he is to the point. What are you looking for in a prospect when you're out on the recruiting trail to come play linebacker at the University of Tennessee?
What do you look for?
Speed, fast, quick, speed, athletic. And that's where the game is evolving to where what you need today from a linebacker standpoint is you need length and you need athleticism. If you have those two things, you can start with that as a core.
So no Eric Canes are going to be playing football at the University of Tennessee. You need speed, 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 speed. He was very quick and direct, athleticism and length, and I can't wait to see how he recruits and how kind of what his plan is on the recruiting trail here at the University of Tennessee. First impressions, really, really, really excited, kind of blown away, to be completely honest. And again, it's not like I had it is not like I had low expectations of William Inge coming in here. Again, he's not a guy that's coached in this area, so I don't know a whole lot about him outside of reading up on his resume and looking at his past stops and everything. I'm excited to cover a program with a linebackers coach that kind of gets after it like this, and so thought that was really, really cool. Hope you enjoyed it. Let's hear from Darrell Sims, who I do have some familiarity with, and I was excited to hear him yesterday as well, as Tennessee introduced both William Inge and Darrell Sims, new linebackers and running backs coach, who you're going to hear from next in segment 2 on a Monday afternoon. That is coming up next as we continue on here on a Tuesday Locked On Vols. You can get buckets and shoot your first shot over at FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That is $150 if your bet wins. You can bet on all your favorite NBA players, all your favorite NBA teams, like with the quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and so much more. NASCAR is back in session. You guys know I've talked about it on the show before. I used to watch NASCAR all the time, but now I watch a little bit, but I am placing some wagers over at FanDuel Sportsbook on NASCAR because there are so many different ways that you can win and you can make some money. NASCAR, college basketball is happening right now. Before you know it, college football is going to be around the corner, and Major League Baseball, all that over at FanDuel Sportsbook. Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to shoot your shot today. Again, that's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, so Tennessee introduced William Inge, linebackers coach, and Darrell Sims, running backs coach. And I mean, the hires were made official. You know, Tennessee put out a press release and all that a couple weeks ago after VolQuest broke the news. But for the first time, we got to hear from these guys and talk to these guys in this introductory press conference. So we heard from William Inge. And again, like I was saying in segment number 1, it's not like I had low expectations. I just didn't know much about him. He's never coached in this area and all that. If you heard my voice tremble right there, I've been playing with a rubber band and I just snapped it. So we'll move on now. But Darrell Sims, I know all about. Again, if you didn't hear the show whenever we talked about his hire, he was at Carson Newman one year when I was there. I mean, obviously I was on the other side of the ball, didn't have much interaction with him, but I was on kickoff team, and his special teams responsibility that year was kickoff, and so he coached me in that regard. But just being around him, and I was really blown away back then when I was 19, 20 years old, however old I was, and just knew that he was going to be coaching big-time football one day. Could see it back then, and he left Carson Newman, went on, coached at Western Carolina and East Carolina and Louisville and Cincinnati, and now he's here at Tennessee, and a guy that I think is going to recruit really well, a guy that I think is going to bring a whole lot of energy, connectiveness, and be a pretty daggone good running back coach in the process. So some of the highlights from his introductory press conference, we'll kind of start here because I think you guys are going to love this. His memories growing up, not too far here from Knoxville, watching Tennessee on television, and his thoughts about the University of Tennessee from an early age. You guys are going to love this answer.
When I was growing up, being able to watch them on Saturdays, and in my opinion, it was RBU. I mean, you turn around and you watch Jamal Lewis when I was growing up, Travis Henry when I was growing up, Travis Stevens when I was growing up, seeing them run through that power T to come in here, and they were beating up on everybody. And it was one of those deals that you had admiration for the program. It was one of those deals I wanted to be able to come here and play, but I wasn't good enough to play here. I had a teammate in high school that played here, so I always had very, very fond memories of watching Tennessee on television.
So like William Inge talking in segment number 1 about how that power T, it's just a brand and not just the SEC but college football. Darrell Sims is discussing right now watching Tennessee play on television on Saturday afternoons, and the likes of Travis Stevens and Travis Henry and Jamal Lewis and RBU. And so I thought that was really, really cool, and I wanted you guys to hear that one first. How Sims is going to go about kind of building a new room. It's not like he's taken over a group that doesn't have a lot of talent. They got a lot of talent, and though you've lost Jabari Small and Jalen Wright, you bring back Cam Selden, of course, Dylan Sampson, and some young guys that you like a lot in that room. A lot of potential there, but kind of what's his thought process? How does he go about incorporating himself into what is now his running back room
Number one, having them understand me as a person, what I'm about, kind of telling them my story and my background. And then being able to get to know them, not as a football player, but as a person, getting to know them from the inside out and understand, what's the trials and tribulations that they've had to go through as young men, what's their family dynamic and background, and then what drives them and push them. Because I tell them all the time, I'm not getting on you as a person when we're out there between those white lines. I'm getting on you as the player. As a player, you're never going to be right. We always got to coach you hard, but as a person, I got to love you. And I got to love you as a player as well, but I got to get on your tail as well.
Again, I'm not trying to take credit for his coach. Certainly, I'm not trying to take credit for his coaching career. That sounded kind of weird coming out of my mouth. But my experience at Carson Newman, he spent 1 year at Carson Newman. I know a lot of you guys listening right now have no clue what Carson Newman is, but if you're watching on YouTube, that helmet behind my ear, there it is. That is the Carson Newman helmets, Division II here in nearby Jefferson City, Tennessee. I'm sure it was like this for him, and that's kind of how he was brought up in the game of football and everything. But what he said right there, I mean, I'm gonna coach you hard between the white lines. I'm gonna yell at you. I'm gonna get after you because you're never gonna be perfect. You always got to improve as a player. I'm gonna love you as a player, but I'm gonna love you as a person. But I'm gonna get after that bud. I mean, if that is not the Ken Sparks way right there, may he rest in peace. I just hearing him say that, I'm like, okay, I've lived that, and I've definitely heard that, and I've seen that firsthand for 4 years in my experiences. That is the Carson Newman way for sure. But surely, he had that mindset before he even got to Carson Newman, and certainly afterwards. Now he's at Tennessee. I thought that was really, really cool. What about the Josh Heupel offense? How Josh Heupel incorporates his running backs into the system? What was appealing about that to Darrell Sims upon taking the job here at Tennessee?
My perception of the offense was that it was always dynamic and it was always physical in terms of the run game. I mean, when you sit there and you look at all the different parts that kind of go along with it and the mechanics that make up this offense, it was always one of those ones that I felt like gave the defense issues from a lot of different areas. And I know a lot of people just look at it from the tempo standpoint, but it's a lot of things that goes into it that makes it hard for a defense to have to defend. So it was one of those ones that I wanted to learn and get used to and get comfortable with as well.
Two more clips I want you guys to hear real quick, and I think they're both important. Like William Inge, the question was asked, what are you looking for in a linebacker? Well, to Darrell Sims, it was, what are you looking for in a running back when you're out on the recruiting trail? And I thought it was important to bring to the show. Here's what he had to say about who he's looking to add to the room in terms of recruiting.
I think one is the mental and the physical toughness standpoint of it. Two is football acumen, how smart are you, and then the retention piece of it, then change of direction, short area quickness. I think everybody, when they look at a running back, they look at, can he hit the home run? Can he take 180 yards? Yes, you look at that, but what are the other intangibles that come along with that, with short area quickness, playing behind your pads, good body control, good balance, and then being able to be willing to put your face on somebody in pass protection. Those are the things that kind of make up in terms of a high school back as you're evaluating and you're looking for one.
I mean, maybe we're too close to it, and maybe we're coming off the NFL Combine where he was incredible. But, I mean, did that not feel like he was describing Jalen Wright? I think, whenever Jeremy Pruitt and his staff, and honestly it was Jay Graham, recruited Jalen Wright to Tennessee, you probably saw all those characteristics and traits that he could turn into. I mean, at the time, he was kind of known as a scat back and kind of a home run hitter, track guy, speed guy, but knew that he could come in and add that armor, like Jerry Mack used to say, and learn patience and turn into a complete back. And that's what Jalen Wright was when he left here at Tennessee. I mean, you saw this year 4 touchdowns, all 4 of those over 50 yards. He certainly had the home run mentality, but he rushed for over 1,000 yards on hardly any carries compared to a normal running back. And he was patient, and he learned to run through the tackles, quick burst, change of direction, all that type of stuff. I mean, what Darrell Sims was just describing there, Jalen Wright, from this past year. And so, again, I know that he just left Tennessee and he's going to pursue in the NFL and had a great weekend at the Combine, but that is exactly who I thought of when he was kind of describing that, as he's looking for more Jalen Wrights, and certainly that would not be a bad strategy. Last thing that I want to play here from the introductory press conference from new Tennessee running backs coach Darrell Sims. Tennessee has rotated running backs, sometimes too much in my opinion, but I do love the fact that under Jerry Mack, with Josh Heupel, Joey Halsley, Alex Golish, they rotate running backs, keeping everybody fresh, 2-headed, 3-headed monster. How will Darrell Sims go about rotating at that position? Good question. Here's his answer.
Yeah, I think it's all dependent upon the offense, and then, what Coach Heupel wants to do, and then what Coach, we just kind of flow from that standpoint. In the past, we rotated to keep guys fresh, but at different offenses that I've been in, whether it's a no-huddle up-tempo offense, we've been able to play, multiple guys and keep them fresh, but it all depends on kind of how we're flowing offensively, and then who's in rhythm. That's a big piece of it. You never want to get a guy out of rhythm. I always talk about when you're playing running back, you kind of get in that groove to where it feels like you can just feel where the seams and holes are opening at. So we go from that standpoint, and then who got the hot hand? You never want to, pull off the hot hand. You want to let them eat.
So pretty self-explanatory, right? I mean, you want to let them eat. You don't want to point anybody that has a hot hand, but you want to make sure everybody is rested and energized to go for a 4-quarter football game. So that's something we truly won't see until the games roll around. How big is that rotation? Because again, Tennessee runs a lot of plays. Tennessee goes tempo. And so we're just not going to be able to see how big or small that running back rotation is until next fall gets here. So we'll see what it is. Great stuff, both from Darrell Sims, Tennessee's new running backs coach, and William Inge, Tennessee's new linebackers coach. Really impressed with both of them. And I think Vol fans are going to love them. And I think that they're going to add a lot to the coaching side. I picture myself as a recruit, and they're in our living room and they're talking. I mean, it just feels like you can connect to them, and it feels like you can kind of speak their language, and I think that's going to really, really help in recruiting. Good stuff there. Hey, when we come back, you guys had some good stuff. Mailbag questions, a couple of really good ones. We'll get into that here when we return on a Tuesday Locked On Vols. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be right around the corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. Like the 2024 Nissan Rogue. It's perfect for the city drives and great escapes. Class exclusive Google built-in is always updating its assistant to call. Let me try that again. Class exclusive Google built-in is your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. See, that makes sense when I slow down and I read the copy. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, Google Play Store are built in right to that 12.3-inch HD touchscreen system in your Rogue. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. Okay, so that sounds great. Let me tell you about the Pathfinder. Pathfinder's got room up to 8 to fill 8 people, and expansive cargo capacity and advanced availability 4x4 capability. With 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds of towing, when adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer that call. Take the Nissan Rogue, take the Nissan Pathfinder, or even the Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure today. Shop NissanUSA.com. Mailbag questions coming up next here on Locked On Vols. All right, guys, welcome back in here to your Tuesday edition of Locked On Vols. I'm your host, Eric Kane. As we do each and every week on this day, we answer your mailbag questions. I do want to start over on the Locked On Vols channel, and I put a tweet out there every Monday, and you guys can reply to that tweet or send me a DM or whatever the case is. And we'll start with Mr. Clean Gaming. What teams do you think will take on the challenge that is Joe Milton? We all know he's a project player, but he has the tools to be successful. It's a good question. I don't know specifically what teams. I cover Tennessee football. It's my job. I'm an NFL fan. I watch football pro level, but outside of my favorite team, I couldn't tell you exactly what the draft needs are for everybody. There are teams out there that are always quarterback hungry. I don't think anybody's drafting Joe Milton to be the face of the franchise. I think that would be probably not a very good strategy for your NFL draft. However, I think that he's going to be a mid-round pick. You saw the throws to the combine, just the effortless throws that he put on, in shorts, no defense, and we knew this was the time for Joe Milton to shine. And I think he did a good job over the NFL combine, much better than what he did for Senior Bowl week, down in Mobile. So to answer your question, in terms of teams, I have no clue, man. I mean, we'll just have to wait until we get closer, see the teams that are absolutely quarterback hungry, or might take a quarterback in the mid to late rounds. But I do think Joe Milton will be a mid-round guy, 3rd, 4th. He's not a first. Hardly any quarterbacks go in the second. It's not highly practiced quarterbacks go in the second round. I know Will Levis went to the Titans last year in the second round, but we'll see. But I do think that, he'll be drafted for sure because of just like what you said. It's like he's got every tool you want. Oh, he just needs my coaching. It's like, again, the old analogy of the bad boyfriend. You're the girl. It's like, oh, but I can fix him. He'll be better for me. It's like, we'll see what happens. I'm not trying to like say, this is as a bad thing about Joe Milton. He's got so much potential, and I can't wait to see him. Hopefully he'll get an opportunity. But in terms of teams right now, no clue. Let's go to Jared. Jared says, which Vols, combine or not, will be drafted, and what are your projected rounds for each? Yeah, okay, so Joe Milton, I think, will be a mid-round, probably third, fourth, maybe fifth, or probably fourth, fifth, maybe third at this time. I haven't really dove too far down deep into the prospect boards and the top 10 to each position. I know that, Joe Milton is at least fifth or sixth on the quarterback charts. So I think there's that. I think Jalen Wright is moving on up. If I'm not mistaken, I believe Mel Kiper Jr. has him in the conversation at least as his top running back. And it's not the best running back class for the draft this year. But Jalen Wright is up there according to Mel Kiper Jr., and that's who I trust more than anybody. He's been doing it since longer than you and I both have been alive, most likely. So I'll say Jalen Wright. I'll go second round. I bet he's third round right now. I bet he sneaks in the second round. We'll see. Jalen Wright will definitely be drafted. Kamal Hadden will be drafted. He'll be drafted probably mid to late, probably fourth, probably day 3 guy. I'd be surprised if he was drafted day 2. Again, this is at the very beginning of March. A lot can happen between now and then as we continue to go on with pro days and dive down deep into the NFL mocks and all that. But I'll say mid to late round for Hadden. In terms of somebody that wasn't at the combine that I think will be drafted, I do think McCallum Castles will be drafted, but he'll be late. Then the conversation is, what about Gabe Jeudy-Lally? What about Aaron Beasley? What about Jabari Small? I don't think Jabari Small will be drafted, but he'll be in a camp somewhere. Those are the ones that kind of jump out to me right now in terms of who's going to be drafted and whatnot. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. Jared has a basketball question. Which remaining game is more important from a resume standpoint? South Carolina on the road or Kentucky at home? Again, without diving too far down into the KenPom rankings and all that and the efficiency numbers and all that, I'm inclined to say winning on the road at South Carolina would be more impressive because, anytime you beat Kentucky, it's huge, don't get me wrong. But it's winning on the road in this league, which is so hard to do. And Tennessee just did it at Coleman Coliseum the other night down in Alabama. South Carolina is in play to win the SEC, just like Tennessee is. I think winning on the road at South Carolina would be more impressive, in my opinion. That's hard to say because Kentucky still has incredible talent, more NBA talent on that team than anybody in the SEC, in my opinion. But they don't play defense. They don't play defense at all. And I think Lamont Paris is probably going to be SEC, not for sure SEC, might be National Coach of the Year. And then lastly, a baseball question. Which outfield combo do you like the best, and what concerns do you have about starting pitching, relief pitching? First on the outfield, I'm not giving up on Hunter Inslee yet. He was Tennessee's second best hitter in SEC play last year, and he plays really good defense in center field. He's slumping right now. He's kind of worked himself out, got a couple hits this weekend, which was good to see. Liking him more at the bottom of the order with this lineup for sure, especially the way Blake Burke's come along, hitting in the 2-hole. He's not a leadoff hitter, that being Hunter Inslee. So I'll go Inslee in center, Dreiling in left, and Tiers in right. But again, as I've talked about on the show, I love the versatility that you have when Inslee's not hitting or you want to get some more pop in that order. Tiers in center, Dreiling in left or a DH or whatever. Dreiling in right because then you put Bargo in left. Dreiling in right field, Robin Villeneuve in left. There we go. I had to talk myself through it. Robin's turned into an outfielder now, but strictly he's kind of left field. So if you want to get more pop in that order, you can go Dreiling in right, Tiers in center, Villeneuve in left, Bargo at DH. I just love the options that Tennessee has, versatility and all that. I do have concerns about playing in bigger parks with the outfield of Tiers in center, Robin in left, and Bargo in right, if he's in right. But again, options galore. That's a good thing. Concerns about starting pitching. Got to get A.J. Russell healthy. For sure, got to get A.J. Russell healthy. And as I've written about continuously, and I've said maybe on this podcast before, for Tennessee to be as dangerous as it needs to be, Nate Snead and AJ Causey need to remain in the bullpen. Just because it gives you a different look. It gives you versatility. It makes you deep. And that's what teams are that play in June. Like last year, you had Chase Burns, Seth Halverson, Cannon Sewell, just to name a few. You need that type of versatility in your bullpen, in my opinion. It gives you a different look. However, Tennessee doesn't have a third starter when everybody's healthy right now. Neither one of the freshmen, Derek Schaefer, Matthew Dallas, have kind of taken that job and run with it. Xander Seacrest, in my opinion, really hadn't been given a chance, even though he started 2 games, but he's only pitched like 4 innings in those 2 starts. Maybe the decision's made for you, and Causey will be that third starter. I don't know, but that's kind of my concerns for right now. Last one is going to go to Braden, and I really, really like his 2 questions that he asked, and maybe we'll turn this into a segment either tomorrow or later on this week. But briefly, as we bring a Tuesday show to a close, Hard Knocks SEC. Which SEC team would provide the best Hard Knocks TV season this offseason? I got a couple. Number 1, Ole Miss. Because why? Well, Lane Kiffin will be entertaining. The transfer portal king, his busy offseason, all that and more. Everybody's anointing Jackson Dart to be the second coming at quarterback because he chose to come back. He lost a really productive running back to Ohio State. So many storylines. I think Ole Miss would be great. I think Florida would be great because you got the head ball coach, Steve Spurrier, publicly coming out and saying, I'm not sure about Billy Napier heading into a make or break year. Have you seen the end of that schedule? I think Florida would be good. I think, Jimbo's gone, but I think A&M would be kind of decent. Alabama would be fantastic, of course, because Saban's leaving and Kellen DeBoer's coming in, and I think all that would be good. I'm going to spend a segment talking about that. I think that's fantastic. Good question. And then finally, the last question here from Braden. If you had to explain what it means to be a Vol fan to someone not from Tennessee, what would you say? Just the one word that comes to mind is passion. And I know that kind of describes what fandom is, but man, nobody's passionate like Tennessee fans. Nobody loves more than Tennessee fan. Nobody hurts and nobody attacks like a Tennessee fan. It's just a special program. It's a special place in the United States. It's a special fan base, and social media has allowed Tennessee fans to link up from across the world. And I think from a social media brand perspective specifically, I think Tennessee does a great job in keeping fans up to date and putting that power T everywhere. So I don't know. That's a hard question to answer, but I would just start with passion because I truly don't think that there is a more passionate fan base anywhere in the world. I know there's some great fan bases out there. Some great football, soccer franchises that have great fan bases out there, baseball, other college football rivalries, college basketball. I get it. But passion's kind of where I would start. Fun show today. Appreciate you guys here making Locked On Vols your first listen, and everydayers for coming back and being with me here today. Can't thank you enough. Great stuff hearing from Tennessee's new assistant coaches, William Inge and Darrell Sims, from their introductory press conferences. Let me know what you think about those guys, and we'll get you set for Tennessee at South Carolina. That is coming up tomorrow night. Huge basketball game, that and a whole lot more. Josh Ward will be with us here on a Wednesday, Locked On Vols. Until then, everybody stay safe and enjoy the rest of your Tuesday.